Is it happening?
Hello and welcome to the second ever episode of Take All Comers, the newest show on the Stat Check Network, featuring myself, Tyler Bortel, and my lovely co-host, including
Nicholas Olson Johnson.
And the illustrious
It's Lucas Troller. What's up?
And today is the day of all days because we are out here in person, in the same place, in the great outdoors. Welcome to Beach Hammer, boys. We are out here talking about Grinding 101. This is an episode all about practice. It's all about practice. Absolutely. We got a practice weekend going on, and we're going to break it down for y'all. How to practice, when to practice, who to practice with, and what to do while you're doing it. But before we get into any of that, I got to check in with the boys, and it's weird that they're all here. How are we doing today, Lucas?
I'm doing great. It's been, Beach Hammer is a regular tradition now for us up here in the Northwest. It's kind of like a fun little weekend excursion that we take to our buddy Kim's beach cabin down in approximately Waldport, Oregon. And it's really fun that we've made this a regular thing every 3 months because It's fun to look forward to it and have it regularly on the schedule. So, this is definitely one of my favorite weekends of each quarter. And just excited to be here. I think Warhammer is in a great spot right now. And I'm also feeling good about where I am and things. So I'm very excited to be playing some games and seeing what's new. How are you, Nick?
I'm feeling fantastic, dude. I had a great night's sleep after staying up, regaling tales of old tournaments and editions with my friends, which is, really, what this game's all about, like the memories that you make, the relationships that you have, the friends that you spend your time with. So I love that Beach Hammer brings that together, and also the fact that we can just grind a ridiculous amount of 40K games in a 3-day weekend. So I'm happy. I got 2 games in yesterday, which is great. Hoping to get like 3 or 4 in today. So
yeah, there have already been like 6 to 8 games played on the arrival day, which is pretty cool. And we'll be here at least another 24 to 36 hours. So that should be fun. How you doing, Tyler?
Sweet. I'm doing real well. There's no place like home, and out in the woods is home for me. Having a great time. Playing some really fun games. Trying out some new stuff. Very exciting. Look forward to hearing about that in a minute. But yeah, let's dive right into our main topic of the show today, which is practice. I think the first question that's kind of on everyone's mind is, what the hell are we talking about when we're talking about practice? We're talking about practice? NBA fans appreciate me. So Lucas, if you think about a game as specifically a practice game, like obviously we know what a tournament game is, but what differentiates, it's in your mind, the difference between like going down onto your local game night on a Tuesday to play some Warhammer Against a Stranger and getting a real practice rep in with, other people who you're on a similar or skill level, similar page with, what are we looking for in a practice game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the answer to that really comes from that last bit you touched on, which is you want to surround yourself with practice partners who are all on the same page with like what you're trying to get out of the game, right? So when I sit down for a practice game, like I do at Beach Hammer, and there's 8 people to choose from, of like, these are all fantastic players and they're all playing different armies, and they all know exactly what they're doing. A practice game really heavily involves you guys working together to figure things out. I think last night's game between you and me was a great example of this.
Yep.
Where we were just like trying to figure out, I went first playing Chaos Knights into Tau, and rather than just like detach after my movement phase and let Nick do his thing, or after my turn 1 and let Nick do his thing, we were kind of like, okay, this looks like a terrible spot for the Tau. Let's try to like find little angles or things to do to get them back in the game. So it's less about, I want to beat my opponent, which is kind of what you're experiencing at a tournament, and much more, let's try to like figure out the most optimal way for both of us to play this matchup. So that can be not only talking during the game about what things are going on and how to play more optimally, but also after the game, kind of recounting the fact, you guys can both touch in on like, what did you expect this matchup to be coming in? What was it in the end? And then kind of like any differences there. So it's really that like constant dialogue between you and your opponent about how the matchup is going and what you're thinking about it that really defines practice for me. What about you guys?
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not like a fan of practice games with like infinite takebacks. Like I'm gonna go for this completely ridiculous, over the top risky play, and then you fall on your face and you're like, let's just re-rack. And it's like, okay, well, let's, sometimes like if you go into the game and you tell your practice opponent, like, let's limit test this, I'm gonna like run at you turn one, maybe we'll whiff, and like let's play from that position. I think that's a fantastic state of mind. But like Lewis said, it really needs to be a dialogue between you and your opponent. And something that I really like is kind of like when we're playing, giving your opponent room to breathe. And then if it looks like they're stuck, maybe being like, hey, looks like you're kind of stuck. What if like we went with this? Or did you see this opening here? Or like this flank is kind of weak here. And it's like pointing out stuff because sometimes what I notice when I like try different armies, especially, is like maybe an army like Tau, for example. You're like, oh my God, this army shoots ridiculous. And then you play that army and you're like, oh my God, it's so hard to actually shoot with this army. And so like learning the strengths and weaknesses like that, your opponent can offer you some really great perspective where you feel like this is a auto loss situation. And then they go like, hey, I'm actually terrified of this. What if we try out this interaction? So I think that's what's great. What you're saying, yes, the goal of Warhammer is to win. But certainly the goal of a practice game is to come out with both of you learning something from it. There's still going to be a winner. And I definitely don't like let's just keep going back and forth until we end up with a tie. But just try to learn something from the game instead of just getting ran over and getting sad. There's
a middle ground between, constantly re-racking every single scenario and going back in time and like, oh, I made a mistake here. Let's fix that at the start of my turn. Oh, I made a moving mistake. Let's just fix that. There's a sweet spot where you can learn a lot of things, but you're not constantly, resetting the game. Those sticks forever. It's a nice little balance in there. Re-racking is an important tool, though. You need to know when to use it, but it's not always.
I think that's a fantastic segue into the big question, because I think re-racking is what's on everyone's mind when we're talking about practice. What is the appropriate point to do a re-rack? You think what in your brain, in what signal goes off? You're like, let's call it, let's re-rack this, as opposed to that's a mistake you're going to have to learn from the hard way. How do you make that decision?
I think it's about time. I think from the moment you first realize, oh, this is going terribly, I want to re-rack this game, this feels awful, play one whole more battle round. And then at that point, you and your opponent can really assess, like, yes, this is truly doomed. I think both of the last games we've played, where I have run at you with Chaos Knights and you're like, or not run at in the Votann game, but it looks horrible from you on the outset. And then we just kind of like brainstorm some ways to like, pick away at a flank, engage me when I'm weak, deny my primary by shooting out like key war dogs. And
the game has ended up as like a tie.
Or a very narrow Chaos Knight win. It's like
when like from turn one, you're like, oh my God, I'm losing like 16-4.
If we re-racked that game, we would have lost so many valuable lessons on turn 3 to 5. So that's why I feel like it's important to give yourself a full battle round, because we gave Nick and myself a full battle round and then realized, oh yeah, it's dire, but it's not like an auto loss 20-0. And I feel like, especially in the team's jargon, 20-0 gets tossed around all the time. It's not that common. Unless there's a serious skill discrepancy between you and your opponent, or something has gone catastrophically, it is very hard to get 20 in this game. So it's much better to actually spend your time learning how to scrap and fight for every point than immediately putting yourself in the mindset of, this is doomed, I give up. Because that's a great way to give up, 20 to your opponent.
Absolutely. And it is... we often see it as being valuable to practice how to execute your first couple turns and be in a winning position. But if you don't practice playing from the back foot, you're never going to win from the back foot.
Yeah.
I have had a lot of games in tournaments where I put someone on the back foot, you do something clever early on, you put them a little pressure, and they just throw their hands in the air and walk away. And that is a mentality that you can only bring in the practice sphere to bring into a tournament environment. When I was more into sports, the big phrase that they would always say was, if you practice like you play, you'll play like you practice. And like that level of constant like urgency and of attention to detail, right? The sooner you get good at that on your kitchen table, the sooner you're going to execute that on the tournament hall. If you find yourself not being able to execute, practice executing. It's not that crazy of an idea. So a little bit more on the narrative side here. What are you guys practicing right now?
I think I'm the easiest one because you guys have both had some faction jumping in the last little while, just trying to like figure out what's worth us practicing, and also just uncertain with the new data slate what's going to be most effective. I've just continued to play Orcs and CK. I played Orcs 2 weekends ago at Gongai, the GT that we had up here in Forest Grove. Had a lot of fun, but I think I am not 100% locked into this, but I'm really only going to be playing my Team USA practice games for Orcs until the Codex comes out, because I mean, it's going to be in the next month or two anyway. I just am not enjoying the current detachment very much, and I'm ready for something new. So I'm going to like table that, put it on the back burner for a little while, and play some stuff for CK. Because I feel like there's only like maybe one or two other CK players in the team, and they have also primary factions that CK is kind of a secondary for them. So I feel like I'm kind of the CK responsibility, whereas Orcs, there's a couple more people on the team that are playing Orcs. So I do feel like it's kind of my responsibility to dive deep into the faction. So I'm trying out the Lancer. I'm going to play some games with the Rampager maybe eventually, but unfortunately it is looking like the all dog build is still probably the strongest one. Yay. So I'll be playing some games with that later this weekend as well, and just trying to unpack that faction a little bit. And play a lot of practice games because the meta's definitely gotten shaken up. You know, CK is in mostly the same place, but there's all sorts of new armies that are really good, and also armies that were already good have new builds that I need to figure out, things like Eldar, things like Custodes. So I'm playing CK versus Custodes right now. So that's kind of where I'm at, just trying to unpack the CK faction, and on pause for Orcs until the Codex comes out. Very excited for that.
Sweet.
What about you guys?
Yeah. For me, this practice weekend, so not only Team USA, we are also planning on to Champions Cup,
Yep.
the event in September. It's a big USA teams event down in Texas, where
Yes, sir.
people are coming internationally. So we have a local team of our local friends, local community that we have built, and looking at our team roster, looking at the factions that the people specialize in, we noticed there were some like glaring holes. Specifically with a lot of shoots gun armies, because we are a lot of melee enjoyers. And so being the resident falls on the shoots gun sword for our team, I decided to do that again. Well, more I guess got kind of bribed into, because someone pointed out that Votann is actually a shoots gun army and is very similar to the Tau. So I've been practicing with Tau. I know that they have a codex not right around the corner. It could be it's probably more like 3 months, right? Like, you know, the Dark Angels one's been super delayed, even though we saw that like 2 months ago. But yeah, so I've been practicing Tau just to kind of get a feel for how their army works, because their, spoiler alert, army mechanic is very funky. It takes a little bit of getting used to. We have some Eldar here that I'm looking to practice as well, because we don't have any like really Eldar players on the team. Also keeping up Votann, because like Lucas said, for Team USA, my main factions for that are Votann and Necrons. We have a lot of Necron players, especially now. And we have like 2 Votann players, and one of them's not really playing the faction right now. So I'm kind of focusing on getting some data on Votann, just kind of making sure that there's not something super crazy there, or maybe there is. I don't know. And last but not least is Necrons, which I'm still practicing, because learning how to play at them, learning how to play against them, learning what matchups they're strong and weak in is incredibly important right now for both teams and singles. So, yeah.
Nice.
Sick. I am. If you listen to our first episode last week, at the end of the episode, we were talking about. Someone asked a great question, which was, if there is an army that you feel like you would I don't know, said play well or enjoy playing, that was a different faction than you're playing right now, what would it be? And my like unequivocal answer for that was Necron Hypercrypt, because like it does all of the kinds of bullshit that I love to do with GSC and with NIDS, but like it's actually a good army that like can do some damage. What a crazy idea. And everyone on USA has been yelling at me to just play a good faction for a minute here. I've been focused really hard on being the guy who's covering Unending Swarm and the only guy playing GSC right now, and like those are not super useful data, it turns out, because those armies are okay. Like, and Unending Swarm definitely has a place in some teams' rosters, but like
It's solved. Not solved. That's a very strong word, but like you've got a very solid basis for where those factions are at.
Yeah.
You don't need to like deep dive them at this moment. We kind of understand what's going on there.
Yeah, I have some other ideas for this form. Like I said, I want to try this Hormigaunt build and stuff that like are interesting, but like just continuing to do what I've done, which I've played like I think 9 or 10 games of Swarm this year so far, of just the same list over on USA CTS, in addition to like going to 2 tournaments with it. Like I've gotten enough of Swarm reps. I'm trying to try something else. So we are playing Necrons. Messing around with Hypercrypt, trying to help Ganyo get ready for Pyra. List for that should be coming out soon. Not going to talk too much about the list because I think the Pyra lists aren't out yet. I think their list lock has happened, but I'll talk more about the list later on another show. But having a ton of fun with that nonsense. Tons of bullshit, tons of durability, which is not a thing I'm used to having, but in a shocking turn of events, Catan are really hard to kill, and just having a lot of fun picking stuff up and moving stuff around. And this seems like a good opportunity for personal growth to like play a strong faction as people keep telling me to do or something. So look forward to more of that. We'll see how it's going. But yeah, that's all very exciting for us.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I had a ton of fun. You and I working on that game together against Lucas yesterday.
That was fun.
Yeah,
It was super
absolutely.
cool. I don't know, it's always fun sharing a faction you're excited about with someone else is excited about it.
100%.
And like watching their eyes light up as they're all like, "Oh my god, you can do
I can
this!
do this,
Yeah, like,
dude. I can do
yeah.
this.
Yes, you can."
Yeah, so that'll be a good thing.
Looks like we got a question from Peter.
Yeah, from Piotr. Asks, who is the team's anti-Imperial Guard right now? Seems to be the scariest right now with its control of teleport armies and elite melee builds. So in teams, who has a good guard matchup?
That's a great question, and I think that one we are uniquely unqualified to answer. We in the Northwest, we don't really have a lot of guard players, so we're not practicing against this a ton. We're not playing it ourselves. Just in terms of like, unless you guys have anything hard data related.
I know
to
that like having
offer.
looked at a bunch of matrices, it seems like Vanguard Marines are pretty solid into them.
It seems like you want to kind of hit them where they're uncomfortable, which is their soft, squishy insides in their castle.
Yeah.
So dropping a bunch of, constantly threatening the Centurion teleport, some kind of midfield rush with the infiltrating unit, and then the 3-inch deep strike from Inceptors, obviously.
Yeah.
Having played that a couple times, Inceptors are not fantastic into the holes, like
Mhm.
less than you would anticipate, because you can melt the one that has Oath,
Yeah.
but then the other guys, like, they pop smoke and you hit on 4s, and that's kind of not good.
Right.
Um,
My experience with GSC into guard has been pretty solid. I think
yeah.
that like they have the tools to do the thing. I don't know if they're great at it. The Swarm also plays fantastic into it going first and decent into it going second. A lot of very wrappable holes
yeah.
is a pretty exploitable thing. I understand they have a decent amount of flamers to go around, but like if we're talking about not Catechins with flamers and chimeras, but all the what are they called? Casterkin in chimeras, dropping it down to just 2 flamers doesn't get the job done.
Right.
The open top being not flamer. So I think that there's a lot of play in some of the less exciting factions, but guard counter a lot of the top dogs real hard.
They do. I think another thing is people are just used to playing against certain kinds of shooting in 10th edition, right?
Mhm.
We've seen a lot of terrain getting denser because holy shit, right? Eldar and CSM are going to blast you off the board if they can have direct line of sight to you. That's less true now because with a lot of those like heavy shooting units like Wraith Guard, Forge Fiends, Obliterators kind of getting toned down quite a bit. Guard don't have that level of direct shooting.
No.
Right? They have a tank commander or 2. They have some Casterkin, which don't really shoot that hard. They're just a good all-arounder unit. And then it's just artillery. So get reckless. Drive toward them. Try to put... A lot of the builds are like super greedy, going for like 5 or 6 artillery pieces and are really slim in the midfield. If you just throw your army away to keep them out of the midboard for, 2 or 3 turns and then just get a whole bunch of points while that's happening, you can kind of like creep in on their castle while scoring all your points, and then they can kind of fold. So I feel like, especially transport heavy armies, but ones that can apply a lot of pressure early, maybe even things like Votan, honestly,
Yeah.
with
Mhm.
army wide scout,
Yep.
if you go first, you just charge their entire army on turn 1. Like, what is guard supposed to do? They have no fallback and shoot.
Yeah.
Any kind of that can get aggro like that early is really strong.
The thing to remember when playing into something like guard who are an indirect heavy army who ignore the indirect penalty, right, is that they do not punish you for getting close to them.
Yeah.
Right. Their shooting does not get more efficient when you get in their face. Like a lot of armies that are a shooting castle, if you try to throw something in and overextend, every single gun is pointed at you. Now you're dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
If every single gun was already pointed at you, they're not getting any better at that, and they do not like you being in their face. So be willing to play mega aggressive into guard if you want to get those kind of results.
I would say, kind of like Lucas said, unfortunately, we do have one local guard player who did just come back to the meta. So we're hoping to get some more practice into him. Hoping to ring up some more practice games online as well. But yeah, I agree. Votan, I think, can be fairly decent. They don't seem extremely weak to like getting Ignore LOS as like compared to like Eldar, right? this army's just going to get ripped apart by Ignore LOS.
You're relatively resilient to the Basilisks with
Yeah.
3-wound bikes and T10 Sagittars.
Yep.
Yeah.
But like you said, you can't dawdle around and just wait for them to kill you. You have to like keep them in their DZ while scoring as much primary as you can. And yes, eventually they'll probably kill you because it's really hard to kill all the tanks back there.
Yeah.
But yeah, as long as you can keep them from like taking the mid board and force them to shoot the things in front of them that are like threatening to tag their tanks and keep them there instead of clearing the stuff holding your primary, seems pretty decent.
Yeah.
So
Very cool.
Sweet.
I have enjoyed that Hearthguard unit ingressing in as well, with Grim Demeanor, because it ignores all
Can't
the
be
movement
slowed.
penalties from the Basilisk.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that like Guard really has to watch out for. In the past, at least, in the previous meta, when I played against Guard at some tournaments, dropping that unit in like a midfield ruin just made it impossible for them to approach into the midfield and really like cemented the primary there. So
It looks like the fellow who asked the question says, in Poland we tested a lot, and Imperial Gardasus has maybe Votan as a counter.
Yeah.
So yeah, cool that we both identified that. Seems like anyone that can get aggressive into them early is really strong.
I see it. Absolutely. Sweet.
Cool.
You guys have anything else you want to mention about practice? Or jump into some listener
Let's hit
questions?
some show questions.
Sweet. We got a bunch of listener questions here. First off, from John Johnston says, Tyler, gun to your head, you have to take a Hierophant Biotitan to an RTT, spitball a list, and how do you maximize Big Mama's potential?
What is a Hierophant Biotitan? I don't even know which one
All right,
this
so
is.
Hierophant Biotitan has a ton of shots. They're like some of the only really, really good shots that NIDs have. They're like strength 10, AP3, 3 damage, I think. I'm literally going to pull this data sheet up because I make no promises about my ability to remember
Remember a data sheet you don't play?
when I'm not allowed to play at WTC. It's a Titan.
True.
10 D6 plus 6 blast shots from each gun. So 2D6 plus 12 blast shots, double blast on threes at 10, 3, 3.
Okay.
Cool. And then it has a 3D6 flamer at 7, 2, 1, 12 inch range.
3d6, that's 7. Jesus.
And it's assault.
Okay. Surely this thing's like 800 points.
Yeah, it is 810.
Ooh.
And then defensively, it's 2 up save, T14, 30 wounds,
Jesus.
5 up invuln. All right, so first thing I'm doing is I'm making this invasion fleet. It just has to be, right? You
Yeah,
need to
you
be
need
able to
to
throw a
feel no
feeling
pain.
pain on this bad
Yeah.
boy if you're going to get any mileage out of her. And then the other thing to remember is that she's a transport. She holds 20 or 6 multi-wounders. She cannot transport fly, which is so lame because I want to put gargoyles in her so badly. So in lieu of that, we're going Hormagaunts because
Gargoyles
she
is not
can't-
easy,
because she can't transport fly. You can't put like a hit squad of melee warriors with a prime because the prime flies. So I would just go 20 Hormagaunts and they just go. Right, they get places because they're still movement 10, so now they're movement 13 plus D6 with advance and charge. Like we're getting places, we're wrapping stuff up.
Yep.
Her main gun is assault, but her secondary gun is not. So I'm probably still taking a Hive Tyrant is so expensive in an 810 point unit.
It makes the
But-
feel and pain you want to spam a return free though, which is pretty good.
It does, and it lets her advance and shoot. So she's cutting every angle and everything,
Okay,
and she's
yeah, you definitely
Titanic.
take
So I
that.
think you take a Hive Tyrant.
And then it's just probably
that's-
stuff.
That's like 1,000 points. You take a Biovore because you still need infinite scoring,
Yeah.
and then you take, and then I think you want like maximum lone ops, right?
Yeah. You want at least 4
Yeah,
of
you
the
want
Lictor
2 or
types.
3 Neurolictors, Death Leaper, 2 or 3 Lictors, so that basically your plan is you're just going to put all of your eggs in her basket because you don't play an 800 point model, not put all your eggs in the basket.
Yeah.
Shove her as far forward as possible with a Hive Tyrant right behind her, and then just like lone ops places. If you can fit a Maliceptor, I think that would be a good additional bug if you wanted one more big bug.
Totally.
Something else that's really thick that can benefit from the feel no pain. That could be really excellent.
Yeah.
Do Venom Thropes work on Titanic? Or
They give them cover, but like
you're always gonna have it. 'Cause
you're always
like,
gonna have it because she's huge.
legs gonna be behind a
your
wall.
tail or your gun
Amazing.
or something.
I love
Yeah,
cover this.
so that's not a
It's great.
concern. So I think that's her shtick. What's her thing? Okay, she gets +1 to hit against battle shock units. So you definitely want 3 Neurolictors.
Oh yeah.
Because then she's +1 to hit and +1 to wound. So she'll be strength 10 +1 to wound. Saucy,
Pretty
hitting
good.
on 2s, very saucy, and could be lethal or could be sustained against infantry
True.
as appropriate because you're invasion fleet. Every time she makes a normal fallback or advance, she moves over 4 or less because she's Titanic, so she's just going.
Going over stuff.
And yeah, with movement 12, like she's also going to get the charge pretty well. And in melee, she has 8 attacks on 3s at 22 D6 +1.
Does she have sweeps or anything?
And then she has 10 additional attacks on 3s at 511.
She's gonna get
What
bogged
weapon is
down
that
by
called?
stuff.
Lash whip pods.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Um,
bog her down for
yeah.
sure.
But she's still giant.
What's her
and
OC?
12.
Okay, so she can park on a point and be
I mean,
like,
but also she full covers an objective.
5
man.
dudes will not take this from me.
So I think her getting bogged down is fine because you're like, yeah, cool. Thanks for the -1 to be shot at. Anyway,
I just killed you.
so yeah, that's probably what that list looks like.
How many points is that old One Eye squad?
Decent amount, but I agree that would be a nice.
That'd be a fantastic chat player to
synergy.
throw in there.
Let me pull up that list. Old One Eye is 140, and the Fexen are 250. So you need 390 for that, which
It's
is
expensive.
probably hard to come by, but would be really sick.
Yeah, probably that or like more stuff. Right? Like
Yeah.
cards
Yeah, I
and
think more.
stuff.
Yeah, 10-man Gargs and.
Yep.
I think
2x10
I like the
Gargs or
Maliceptor
something.
idea just to be something tough on your natural expansion.
Exactly. Like I think it's
Maliceptor's tough.
Yeah, he is thick. All right, cool. We'll keep going. All right. Do any of you have a favorite quote? This is from Derek. Yo, but actually, this unit people aren't talking about. Low-key bangs.
What's up, dude?
What is a highly underrated unit that people are not using but should be talking about?
It's almost certainly a bunch of stuff from CSM.
Mhm.
It's Thunderwolves, dude. Oh, I forgot about the funny unit. Thunderwolves are pretty good though. That is a good answer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those boys hit insanely hard. Unfortunately, they don't. Now that we know how the rules work, 4 months later, they don't ignore half damage.
I mean,
which is
for
kinda
me, it's
sad.
definitely Hormagaunts. Like, admittedly, I am the one who says they're terrible.
I mean, you're the one answering the question.
But yeah, but I also like that unit very sick.
It is funny.
And like gargoyles, and also like small termagant units, I think are really valuable. People got really honed in on gargoyles because gargoyles are insane, but the entire Tyranids troop slot is just covered in goodness.
Yeah.
Big fan of that. What do you think, Nick?
I don't know, dude.
What about the Tonk?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, everyone talks about every Votan unit eventually because there's
Yeah.
9 of them. Yeah. But like, let me talk about, like, I guess maybe some like fringe Votan meta choices, which in some other metas were already popular, but have since kind of wormed their way into the wider meta. I think the Tonk, people memed on the Tonk for a while. It was pretty bad when the book came out. At this point, it's kind of a pretty good competitively priced option, like 225 points for a 2-up T12 access to AOC. Turns out when you drive a Land Raider Redeemer into the middle of the board, it's pretty hard to kill. So, like, why not run your own Votan one? It paired with like 5 Zerkers inside is a fantastic way to just get Zerkers somewhere safe, or pair it with 5 Hearthguard with a character, and now you have like a bunch of wound rerolls, which is actually a great tool into Catan with the grenades and the Volkites. I also think other units that people are a little hesitant to try in Votan, the 6-man bike squads are insane. I know that Danny has been like eschewing their virtues for months, and there's always someone who comes in and is like, but I want to run like 3x3. I don't want to commit to 2x6. Just do it. They're fantastic. Turning the bikes from, yes, you're losing a scoring asset, turning them into a damage dealer. They are so good at doing damage. It's just a bunch of 7/1/2 ignores cover with access to sustain 2, and a third of the time you refund that because of the comms. So yeah. I think that unit's great. If you really are scared about losing some of your scoring, just go 1x6 and like 1x3 bikes, or 1x6, 2x3.
Mhm.
The 6-man's great.
they
and
have
the last
so
one's-
much volume.
Yeah.
It's kind of insane.
So
Sweet.
I think those, yeah.
Sticking in the world of Votan, John Johnson asks, question for the local call. What role are you hoping for the hoped for, quote unquote, wave 2 for Votan? I think the army really needs some kind of infiltrating scout unit, as too often I find my whole scout 6 plan thwarted by 3 Nurglings stuck 9 inches off my DZ. I also would like to see
Bummer,
some
dude.
kind of fast melee, but I wouldn't really want to see Sags and Zerks replaced. That all being said, can't wait to add 2 to 3 more characters so we can maintain having half our data sheets being characters. What do you want to see out of wave 2 of Votan, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely speculated on this before, like what would be cool for the game and also just cool to see as a model. I think like a 5-man infiltrating unit would be great. And I think a great role for that would either be like Chthonian, like miners or something. We talked about this, or like pioneers that aren't on bikes. Like, right, just like a little, because like this is, I guess, less of an issue now that Hearthkin can be split into 5-mans. Back in the 9th ed book when they were stuck as 10-mans and that was your only troop option, it was like a little unfortunate. But like a 5-man infiltrating unit would be great to have. Like you said, there's a lot of infiltrators, and it does suck when someone's like, "Oh, no infiltrators, GG, dude." Obviously, you could still lose that defender roll off, but hey, at least you got an option. I think, I don't know if I'd play this model, but I think something that like would probably fit with that unit is like maybe a lone. Actually, no, a lone op would be nice. Having a lone op would be fantastic. I think probably a good like unit for that would be like a pioneer sniper on foot, just like lugging around, sneaking around, big backpack.
Yep.
Cool.
That'd be cool.
I think that'd be great to have. And then what is it? We were talking about like a big mech. Like a
Yeah.
Chthonian mech would be sick.
Yeah.
Kind of like your own dreadnought. Something that like can punch. That is, not just infantry. Because right now you have Circers, which are like a weird unit,
Mhm.
like tanky to certain things, but not really. Punch really hard, and then you have Hearthguard, which are like a good mixed arms unit, but not a huge volume of attacks. So I think a dread of some kind would be cool.
They got to make it unique. From the problem is they have so many Imperial dreads already between all the factions.
Yeah,
I would want it to look
The-
unique, which I'm confident they can do. But
Votan's usually it feels like it's very much like a mix of Imperium and like Tau. kind
yeah,
of. So that's what they've been doing.
If you've been asking for melee crisis suits since 2nd edition, maybe they just
probably
show up in
Votan are
Votan.
getting them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd be
that'd be
unfortunate.
cool.
Like dudes with drill hands or something.
That'd be sick.
What else would I
Dudes with
about?
giant pickaxes.
I know that there's that Votan guy in the kill team with the jetpack.
Yeah.
So a unit of those would be cool, like jetpack guys with like, like assault intercessor equivalent
Mhm.
Yep,
or
that'd be cool.
jump back assault. And then, I mean, I don't know if we're hyped about it, but we'll probably get it. The beam plane. It's in like all the artwork. I don't know what it'll do. If it drops in like jump pack troops, that'd be sick. I'd be okay with that. But I hope the plane meta stays dead. So
Planes are dumb.
yeah.
Great. Sweet. This is probably an appropriate question for Lucas, maybe Nick as well. I feel like y'all have a lot of practice into Death Guard. Plague Marines and character friends, TLDR. How do they work and what rules do they bring to the table? What's the hype on Plague Marines, dude?
Plague Marines are a funny unit. Just generically, obviously the Rhino is really good right now, so it is yet another power armor unit that's really good inside of a box. So if you're familiar playing against Rhinos, you're definitely will be familiar playing against Plague Marines. The biggest thing is they have a range where they don't do a lot when you're past 17 inches, but as soon as you get inside 17 inches, they mess your day up. So they can run at you. The thing is, they'll throw all sorts of different kinds of dice at you, right? They'll shoot you with anti-infantry flamers that suddenly have like AP3. And you're like, okay, what the hell was that? They'll grenade you twice. They'll run in and bash you with lethal hits. So if you're relying on toughness, that's not a reliable defense there. So they're throwing all sorts of different kinds of dice at you. And they have a lot of volume as well between their plasma, their flamers, the 15 attacks in melee, plus the knives. They just have a lot of different kinds of profiles. The biggest thing is like they can nuke down one target a turn with the grenades and their damage, but they're not great at just mowing through your whole army. They're very good at kind of isolating one unit at a time and fighting it within contagion range. So if the best defense is not to get into contagion range. So if you have any tool to engage them from a distance, like ignore line of sight to crack open the Rhinos, or just longer range guns, especially things in the 24 to 36 inch band, is really strong. The other thing is any kind of precision where you can remove the characters in advance, especially if you're trying to engage them in melee, because the units fight first with the Foul Blight Spawn, can be really important. So you can either snipe the character out with shooting, if that's the thing your army can do. Not a lot of armies can, so perhaps the better alternative is run in, use something like a Fight on Death or an Interrupt block with a fodder unit to precision out their characters with Epic Challenge, and then the squads are a lot less tough. Sorry, not a lot less tough, but a lot less hard hitting. So, any tips against Death Guard, Nick?
Tips against Death Guard. I mean, it's pretty generic stuff. Like it's melee army in transports. Cracking the Rhinos as soon as possible is extremely important. Don't full push towards them if you're not killing anything. We had Tanner on last week, and he famously talked about how everyone did that to him, and then he just walked out and killed them because they got in his threat range. They shoot a lot harder than you think with the plasma guns and the anti-infantry flamers and the lethal hits from the biology guy that works in shooting as well. I mean, people were complaining about Votan last edition, right? Having 5-hit auto wound, 4-hit auto wound. I found that the 5-hit auto wound, very easy to get, very strong. Death Guard just have that on Plague Marines by bringing in a 40, 50 point character.
Yeah.
So don't underestimate their damage output.
They really want to bog you down. So if you can lead with something cheap or really weak that you force them to commit to it, because their army at the end of the day is elite squads of Marines and Rhinos, elite brigands, PBCs. Like, they don't have a lot of crap. They don't have scouts or cultists or something to throw out on objectives. So the classic counter to that kind of approach is to just lead with some garbage and force them to overcommit, and then you can pounce on them.
Yeah, you can get them out of the Rhinos. It's great.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Plague Marines are 1032s with 240s or trying to get out of a Rhino.
It's easy to keep them in the Rhino.
Very easy to keep those guys stuck in. As a reminder, the rules on this is that if you want to disembark before the transport moves, which you want to do if you want to, charge with them.
Yep.
You need first of all, two things. First of all, you need to be able to get everyone out wholly within 3. You cannot emergency disembark if the Rhino didn't die.
Yep.
And 532s strung out keeps that from happening comfortably.
Yep.
They got to be outside of an inch. They got to be wholly within 3 of the Rhino. And as another reminder, if the Rhino falls back, you cannot disembark after a fallback. You can only disembark after a normal move. So if you can get at one Rhino dead and the Plague Marine's crippled and the other Rhino wrapped with 5 idiots, like, now the Death Guard player is in an awkward as hell situation, and like that can be backbreaking immediately if you're able to do that while staging a bunch of guns. Like, look for that opportunity when you have it.
Yeah.
Did we talk about what the characters do for them? Or no?
Oh, we should say you did ask that.
Yeah, the Foul Blight Spawn gives them fight first.
Yep.
The biology professor, the biologist Putrefire, gives them lethal 5s in melee and shooting, and once per game he throws an extra grenade for free, so they can double grenade.
Yep. He's also got a good assault grenade. It's good anti-infantry, and the Foul Blight Spawn has a fantastic anti-infantry flamer.
Yeah, it just adds to the amount of random damage to crap they're going to throw your way in a given turn.
Hard to charge, but like Tyler said, you don't even need a full wrap of Rhino to stop them from getting out, which can just be a completely unexpected trick that a lot of them aren't ready for.
Absolutely. The other thing that like the Plague Marines are their only melee often. Like, sometimes they'll have the Terminators, but I run into a lot of Death Guard where it's like, check out all our Rhinos and boxes and then PBCs and guns. And like, if you can wrap all the Rhinos,
the game's over.
The game is it stands. All right, sweet. Follow-up question. Scott has a super major coming up. He's sending in March. What should he play going to the wider meta? He has GSC, Thousand Suns, and Astra Militarum. I think it's a pretty easy question.
Well, I mean, all things equal, like if you're equally practiced on all those, I would definitely either play Guard or T-Suns.
Just play Guard.
Probably play Guard.
Yeah. I mean, as we talked about earlier in the show, especially if you're living in the U.S., Guard haven't really caught on yet.
No, U.S. Guards players are all mouth breathers, so like, no one.
People aren't really prepared for them. They're like, yeah, this guy destroyed a bunch of tanks at me and I killed him. Weird, he had a lot of AP, I guess. People aren't really prepared for Guard. If you feel practiced on Guard, the meta is wide open for them right now, and there's a lot of cute lists people are going to bring that are just going to crumple to Guard. That said, like, if you have like 2 Guard reps and like 100 T-Suns reps, you're probably going to be better at T-Suns. We were talking about that army the other day, where that army is, and I mean, also it's been set on stat check too, like they're playing 11th edition, yada yada. Yeah. That army is very strong and is like theoretical infinite damage, but it's also the easiest army for your opponent to accidentally walk into a game-winning position. Yep. Like, you could have 2 Rubric squads somewhere, and they kill 5 guys, and you're like, nah, acceptable loss. And then they kill these 5 guys on this specific part of the board, and you're like, I've lost the game. They're about to go win the game for me, dude. I lost the game. And your opponent's like, what do you mean? I just shot 5 guys. So you got to watch out for that with T-Suns. Your opponent can definitely trip into a winning position.
It's also worth mentioning, like, play whichever, like, these armies are all playable at super major level, GSC less so than the other 2, but even them, like, play the thing that you're going to have the most fun losing with.
Sure.
I think at the end of the day, right? If you, like, you're going to have fun winning no matter what you're playing with. If losing a game with T-Suns makes you rip your fucking hair out because you can't believe that, like, the perfect thing didn't line up just right, like, and that devastates you, don't play T-Suns. If you cannot stand the fact that someone caught a beat on you, blew up 20 dudes, and the game ends and the spot is GSC, don't play that.
Yeah.
But also, if you really hate the fact that you didn't shell someone to pieces and they passed a couple too many invulns and you lost as Guard, like, you're putting a lot more of the game on dice as Guard than you are with some of these other options here.
True.
So figure out what it is that is you are going to sleep at night best with going X and 1 with, because you're going to have a great time if you win a super major. Like, that is not the experience you need to optimize for. If your only focus is winning, play Guard. But if you're focused on having a good time, figure out what's going to hurt the least when you lose. All right, and last question here from John. Talk me through the basics of deploying pure GSC. How aggressive are you with the Abbeys? How about the pure strands of the Patriarch? Sick question. The rules have changed, and this is my least favorite part of the balanced data slate, is that you can infiltrate with redeploys now. This was a stupid change because what it allows you to do basically is I am the like as a redeploy 3 army with GSC, I am the defender. Cool, my aberrants or my pure strains, depending if I'm running aberrants or not, make a giant line all the way across midfield and block off all of midfield from my opponent's infiltrators. I put the rest of my infiltrators wherever I want, and I redeploy those aberrants into the correct spot in the first place. So like that's your first move as defender, or if your opponent doesn't have infiltrators, you don't have to do this, obviously, but that's the thing. The second thing is that with that change, like the fake out is super available, right? Like you should always be deploying your aberrants first of like, hey, boom, aberrants. What are you going to do about it? And if your opponent doesn't respect it, bummer. And if they do respect it, cool, you go put them somewhere else. Like be mega aggressive because you get full take backs. Like there's nothing that's real about GSC.
Free deploys.
Keep in mind your units that you want to start on the table to up and down turn 1 if you go second. I like a neophyte unit and an acolyte unit, so you can threaten both of those things at once, but not necessarily doubling down. I think you're in trouble. Obviously, you don't want to do double bomba units because that won't do anything, but I think having an acolyte unit on the table is worth it, even though they won't be able to, if they don't also have a Nexus, use +1 ballistical and AP. Don't throw your Nexus away at that. So I like Neos with Primus, Akos on their own, and then aggressive with the midboard. As far as the Genestealers, the Patriarch are concerned, I think that unit is best off ingressing because it lets you take advantage of the 12-inch battle shocks in the fight phase. It's very sick when that works on your opponent's turn, and then your whole turn they're battle shocked. It just makes so many things a lot easier. And also, like, that unit just goes so fast. Like, it solves the infiltrator problem so well.
Yep.
Because it's like, all right, cool, yeah, I'm outside of 12. Great. Anyway, I go 8 plus D6 in charge.
Yep.
You're dead. And a Patriarch with 10 pure strains comfortably wipes 5 infiltrators off the face of the map.
Yes.
Just don't get them shot at or overwatched. But also, pure strains can stand up to Overwatch pretty well because they're 2 wounds.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Oh, really?
that's the
Oh,
pure
they're
strains
2
2
wounds
wounds.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, they made that change last
All the Gene
edition.
Stealers are 2. It's pretty cool.
All the skills are 2. But yes, that's kind
They
of
just always
my
exploded.
yeah. That's kind of my thought process on.
Yeah.
That's
Sad.
the thought process on GSC deployment if you're playing mono. Obviously, things change a lot when you have some guard in there, but we're assuming mono for team setting. You're just like playing mono GSC. So that's what I would recommend there. Sweet. That covers everything that's talked about in our show questions section on the Discord. If you want your questions answered live on the show, you can check out our Patreon to get access to the Discord. It's only $5 a month, and any question you ask on there that's reasonable will get talked about on the show. I know there's one question we didn't answer because we're saving it for another episode. You know who you are. But yeah, make sure you check out the rest of the shows on the network. I know this was a really quick episode because we're out at the beach. We're going to get back to the grind.
Sure.
But check out, of course, the OG Stat Check. Check out Into the Matrix for your hot teams content brought to you by some of the best teams minds in the world from Team Poland and England, I think. Is the other host on that? Yeah, Team Poland, Team England. Check out X and One if you are interested in learning how to balance the hobby with being a regular person with a job and a family or something.
Pathetic.
Nerds. We love you, Tim and Cliff. Anyway, and look forward to we'll have some battle reports coming out pretty soon. We've already filmed a couple of them. Just got to do some of the commentary and whatnot for those.
Yes,
Those will be
sir.
great. So look forward to that.
Be ready for the stat reps, boys.
Hell yeah,
They're
dude.
gonna be lit.
Sweet. We will be back for some more meat and potatoes-y kind of content shortly. Our next big tournament isn't for a full 3 weeks, so we should be back next weekend with
Yep.
some more nonsense. This is
Should
going to be
be.
our regular slot now, Saturdays, 10 a.m. Pacific.
It will be 10 a.m. because we will not be staying up late at the beach.
It'll actually be 10 a.m. He said it, not me. You heard him. Sweet. Looking forward to that. Anyway, with that all being said and done, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
I've been Tyler.
I've been Nick,
It's still Lucas, baby.
and I'm still sleepy.
Nice. That's the weekend life.
For this week, thank you so much, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Bye, nerds.
Take care, everyone.
I'm gonna go pee on a tree.
You do that, bro.
I will.